George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. We got a good brother here in the house. Bart Bailey is the author of It's in Our Bones. And right there, when you think about what's in our DNA and what we have, what we are carrying with us from generations, from the pain, from the joy, from the healing, it's in our bones. And what Bart does in this book is peels back the layers so we could really come to grips with our own experiences in life so that we can see just who we are and how we came to be who we are. You know why? Because it's in our bones. Bart Bailey, he's an entrepreneur, he's a consultant, but you're here to tell us this legacy of healing. And when I think of this, it reminds me, I gotta say, I think of somatic healing and a good brother that I have talked with who has really whose book My Grandmother's Hands has really just it's deep. And so brother, I want to just invite you to share how you came to this work, and even your experience with Brother Monicum.
Yeah, man. Brother George, it's good to be with you. I'm going to share a few things. Like you, even in your intro, you touched on a lot.
Okay.
You touched on a lot.
All right.
And so I'll share with you, as a son, grandson, father, brother, friend. I am currently in DC while we're recording this, but I drove down from unceded territory of what they call Lenni Lenape people, which is outside of Allentown, Pennsylvania. And so some people may be familiar with Bethlehem Steel and all that kind of stuff. And we've been in that area since 2012. And I'm going to get to your question, and I'm going to do it this way. On my ride from McCungy, which is outside of Allentown, I stopped to see my sister. She's having surgery tomorrow. She wasn't there, but I left something. Then I stopped to see my 84-year-old mother. But before those two stops, I stopped in York, Pennsylvania, just to see my grandmother's grave, right? And just, it is not a headstone, it's just her name. So I just kind of put my hand on that thing. And so when you talk about Resma, that's actually a friend of mine, right? And I think about his work, and he talks about his grandmother's hands, and I miss my grandmother's hands. And so I think about the things that have been passed down to me. I actually have a chapter in the book talking about wrinkled shirt, right? And so you got on a dress shirt, I got on this fatigue shirt with something else on it, with some colors on it and whatnot. But there's something about a button-up dress shirt that my grandmother taught me, right? You iron it, the left panel, the right panel, the back, the sleeve. Like, she taught me how to iron a shirt, which I honor. But I also know that she was a nanny, right? And so she cleaned somebody's house and she ironed their shirts. And so when I see somebody with a wrinkled shirt, I have a narrative that comes up very quickly that is not positive, right? And so as much as I've learned from her, and I know how to iron a shirt, and I'm grateful for it, I got to be careful with the narratives and scripts that I make up about somebody else. Because suppose that person just bought the shirt, showed up for the interview, and I could see the squares. They literally took it out the package.
Right,
that's all they got.
Right.
I got to be careful with the scripts and narratives that I make up. And so going back to Resma, he talks about clean and dirty pain. Right? And so that clean pain is what I've processed. I understand. I've explored it. I know the good parts about it. I know the parts that are hindering my growth. And I can process it. That dirty pain is what I'm blaming folks. Like, I'm not even healed from this stuff and I'm just reacting. I have no grounding, right? And that's not healthy. And I'll share this, that's what we're experiencing now.
Yeah.
Right? As a country.
Yeah.
Right? People are just throwing dirty pain at each other, and all they're doing is harming each other, versus I've processed this pain. Now let's sit down and talk about this thing. And so that's what the book gets into. And you touched on a whole lot in the intro, man. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, go back and break it down because I appreciate that. And let me remind one of the reasons, in addition, well, so there's a couple of things we need to just make sure we connect. Proud member of Omega Psi Phi
Yes.
Brew. We did
Brew.
we do that. But also, you're coming to the Q's. And so let's get that date on the book. You're doing I know you're looking to do a book signing.
Yeah.
You want people to buy the book. We'll let people know how to get a copy of the book. But you're coming to the Q's.
Yeah. So, we're going to do something at the campus, local community college, and then we're going to do something for Kraus as well. And then we're going to get with the bros and do something, a book signing. We're still securing where the spot is, right? Either community center or one of the local independent bookstores. But the point is, and I'll share this with you, and it's interesting to share this like this. So I start off talking about my mother, and not to go too far, but there's something about the bros and their mothers. I'll just say that, right? And so I start the book off that way, and then I go into the birth of my youngest, which is talking about my wife. So the book starts centering. I'm a black man, 56-year-old black man. My book starts centering on black women. That's intentional. I just want to say that. Okay.
Why is that? Why did you do that?
So it's in our bones. If we think about our communities and our cultures, you think about black women in our communities, or at least I'm gonna use I statements in my community and in my upbringing, they were the center, right? The kitchen and anything else in terms of work and how things were paid, all of that came through them, right? Who got a spanking, who didn't get a spanking, came through them, right? You got approval, right?
Right.
You're going to get that switch or you're not getting a switch, right? And all of that. And the uplift came through them. The nurturing came through them, right? And so I don't want people to miss that because it's critical today. Now, I end the book talking about my dad because there's plenty. Like, I know how to fish. I know how to scale a fish. Like, I know how to fry. Like, that came from my dad, right? And so there's things I know how to tie a bow tie, both of them. That came from my father. And there's things that he did that were great, and there's things that he did that I cannot put into my body when we talk about Resma's work. That's not going to be something generational I'm going to pass down through my body to my two sons. It is not happening.
It seems to me that in your book, it's in our bones.
Yeah.
Bart Bailey, who will be in the Q's. So those other, let me just talk about the appearances at Krause and at Onondaga Community College. Yeah. Not open to the public?
I don't think Krause is. The college maybe.
Right. But we're putting together at the time, by the time we may know this, by the time people see or hear this, and we'll just put a note that you're going to be at this place at this time. But it seems to me what I was going to say is that this idea of it's in our bones, I just wonder how you came to decide that you wanted to talk about that, because that's deep, brother. You know what I mean? You think about, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not light work, right? No. That's not light work at all to actually think about where in my being did this come from, right?
So I love that question, and I want to clarify why the first two meetings, the Onondaga and Krause. So I'm coming there to share with them this film that's called Everybody's Work. And that film was produced by Shift Films, and I'm one of the people who have the rights to show it. Okay. Right? It's not my film. I didn't create the film. But the film highlights a number of nurses who talk about race and racism in nursing,
Mm.
right? And so we're going to show the film and have a discussion. And so coming back to why. So you mentioned my company. My company is called Courage to Care. Our work is was really founded because of my youngest son. My youngest son spent the first 3 months of his life in the NICU, had open heart surgery at 3 days old. And I'm gonna repeat that: open heart surgery at 3 days old. And so, courage, the word courage, is connected to the heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the heart to care. And then when I think about in our bones, sometimes and this is funny because Resma has this thing around clean and dirty pain. Sometimes when I'm facilitating and having conversations, I talk about what would you want racism to do to you?
Mm.
Do you want it to metastasize in your body and kill you like cancer? Or do you want to metabolize it and process it through your system?
Mm.
And so then I started thinking about cancer, bone cancer. And we talk about the amygdala being where we react to stuff, but that's not deep enough. Because sometimes, and I'll share this with you, and I think you may have similar experiences. I can be in spaces and my body will tell me something's not right.
If we listen to it,
Yes.
okay, we got to
Yes.
listen, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes our body's talking to us, we don't listen.
That's it. That's it. So I give the example. Me and my family travel. We're like, oh man, we're gonna go to this restaurant. The first thing I'm gonna look at what kind of vehicles are in the parking lot.
Mm.
I'm gonna notice the bumper stickers that are there. I'm gonna notice when we open the door, or I'm gonna notice if somebody's at the door and do they open it for me and my family. And if not, when I open the door, does the person greet me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to notice when people turn and see me and my family, is it a welcoming look and turn, or is it something else? I'm going to notice when they say how long we're going to seat, and I'm going to notice where they seat us.
Mm-hmm.
All that is processing, right? And it's and again, it's not something I'm conscious of. It's baked into my DNA and bone.
Oh yeah, you kind of know. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's what we call it. Although a lot of us say we trust our gut,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Yeah. And I'm going to say it's deeper.
It's deeper than
That's why I
that,
keep going. That's why I
right?
keep going. Because you so some of this thing, and I'm gonna share this. Two things. One, it's deeper because it's been passed down through generations. Some of the stuff that I'm doing, my parents did, my great grandparents did, and my great great grandparents did because of navigating in this country. Now,
Mm.
I will also say, because what I invite people to do is explore those things you need to let go of.
Mm.
But some of those things are hindering our ability to connect with other human beings. They were great. I honor them. I love them. But today I got to let them go. And I'm not going to pass them on through my body into my sons. Like, don't do this thing. Yep, our family did that thing, but we're going to let that thing go. Because sometimes, and again, I'm going to try to use I statements. I think about my family reunions. I think about all the good stuff that my family does as a culture. But some of that stuff really ain't culture. It's trauma.
Mm. That and see, now you got people running, right? Because that's the stuff that we don't want to talk about.
That's it.
That's the stuff that we bury.
Yep.
That's the stuff that shows up in behaviors,
Yep.
in choices, because we're burying it.
Yeah.
And so if it's in our bones, what do we do about that? Because the thing is, what I'm hearing you say is we can't avoid this
You
anymore.
can't. Because avoiding is this. Man, I wish I would get better, but you sitting there drinking poison.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting to heal, but you drinking the poison. Like, that's not going to work in no shape, form, or fashion. And so what do we do, right? So I'll share a little bit more. I formed my company in 2015 as a result of my youngest son being bullied.
Mm.
We live in a community that's 5% African American. He was bullied by 5 kids over 3 months. And I wanted to go visit 5 houses.
Okay.
I visited one, and my wife said, don't go to another. So I said, okay. I formed my LLC. I talked to the principal. I said, I need to talk to everybody in your school because somebody didn't see my little brown child in the school system.
Mm.
And we're going to talk about this. And so I did a session around unconscious bias for every adult at that middle school. Now, I was going to start doing my thing, did not, because I ended up working for another firm called Cook Ross.
Mm-hmm.
They were in the top 5 of DEI at that time, based out of Silver Spring, Maryland. And then in 2020, May of 2020, my father passed. And then May of 2020, we actually started doing work under Courage to Care. And we started at the institution where my son was born.
And so what happened?
So the CEO of that particular hospital knew me because I've been serving on their family advisory council, knew me from Cook Ross, and said, hey, man, we want to talk about the murder of George Floyd. I said, let's go. And so we held conversations around that.
And so what do you hope people, why do people need this book? It's in our
Yeah.
bones.
So I saw your reaction when I said there's things that we call culture that is really trauma. Right. And I paid attention to your physical reaction. Like 70% of our communication is nonverbal. And I've seen things when I'm doing facilitation, we got different stuff that people raise their consciousness around their bias, and you can see their bodies like, whoa. Right. And there's no word for this thing here when it does that. But what I believe, and I'm going to go back to where I was going with my son, I wanted to go to 5 houses based on, and this is go back to the book, based on what my father told me, because he was civil rights. He said, if somebody says something, you go to physical violence. Period. And I was a kid, right? We've never told our sons that, so we didn't pass that down to our sons. But my body was tense.
Mm.
And so what I ended up doing was taking an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction class. 8 weeks of meditating, 8 weeks of processing things. Literally, 1 week you had to, every piece of food before you put it in your mouth, you had to think about where it came from. You had to trace it back to the animal or to the farm and who brought it to the farm. Like, I was like, this is tiring. Like, I ain't never gonna finish dinner. But what it did was it heightened my awareness around being truly present to the moment. And so what I'm inviting people in the book is, can you do that with yourself?
Mm.
Can you explore the different pieces of you? What does it mean to be, whatever your gender identity? What does it mean to be Black? What does it mean to be Asian? What does it mean when you start peeling back these layers of your identity? And where did it come from? Because it didn't happen in a vacuum.
And so what did you learn about yourself?
Yeah. So what I'll share with you is I'm still learning.
Okay.
But what I'll share just with the 8 weeks, that if I had gone to violence in the town that I'm in, you would not be talking to me right now. You wouldn't.
Right.
And that wouldn't have helped my wife. That wouldn't have helped my son. That wouldn't have helped either one of my sons, right? That would have been horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But creating space and talking to the first person, the father came over, talked to my son. The kid talked to my son. It was good. And literally, by not doing that, I have traveled around the world talking about this stuff, man. I've been to India twice, Australia, all over the United States, Ireland. And what often happens is especially now, there's a whole framework and thought process around DEI. I don't care what you call it. I want to have a conversation around your humanity in mind.
Mm.
And so what happens most of the time is somebody comes in with that framework and they're like, oh man, you know what? Your session wasn't nothing like what I thought. Your book, that dog on the front, wasn't nothing like I thought.
With the purple and gold dog.
Yeah.
I caught that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Was it nothing like I thought, right? And so there's a perspective around that dog. That dog is a cane corso.
Mm.
That dog is huge, but that dog is a family loving dog,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the image of it takes you someplace else. The image of this right here takes people someplace else. And so what I'm inviting people to do is explore my story that I'm sharing with you and potentially check the non-positive images you may have of me, but then also do your own work because there's reflections in many of the chapters to say, okay, well, what about your story?
Yeah, and when you said Courage to Care, is that the name of
Yeah.
your company, right? And so what I think about is the courage to confront your own stuff in the context of reading about someone else's stuff. Are you willing to confront your own stuff? And maybe confront is not the right word, but in other words, it's fascinating what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do. And I think we're at a stage now where knowing, I guess, answering that question, who am I and what have I suppressed and what am I willing to let go of? And because the question really is, if it's in my bones and it's not good for me,
Yep.
how do I get it out?
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so that I'm not passing that thing on.
Yep.
And that's the work. That's the continuous work. That's not a one and done. And I
No.
think that's what you're really saying, that even if it is in our bones, we can work on it so that we don't take that bad piece
Mm-hmm.
and pass it on. Because if it's in our bones, it's already part of who we are, right?
Yep.
But there's some things that we can do to enhance and to mitigate, as I guess was what I'm getting from you.
Yeah. I mean, we can metabolize this stuff, right? And
Right,
so that
right,
means I'm going to process it out of my system. And part of that is, you may journal with the book, or you may go to your own 8-week mindfulness based stress reduction. Do you have maybe you go out and you walk, maybe you lift, whatever that thing is,
right.
so that it's not stuck in your physical body to
Mm-hmm.
release this stuff. And so, there's several invitations around what someone's practice might or may not be there's an invitations throughout the book.
Let me ask you quickly before we go about, I'm looking at the outline of your book, and the thing that strikes me is shame, blame, and guilt.
Oh man, we about to shut this down and you asked that. All right, so here we go. So and I'll say there's two pieces. One, that's been a thing that I've always thought about, but also one of my mentors in the DEI space, his name is Howard Ross, talks about that too. And so, as well as John Powell, who's out in California.
Right.
And so you think about, and you said it, so I'm suppressing this thing, whatever that thing is. It may be some family stuff, it may
Right.
be my own stuff, whatever that stuff is. I'm going to suppress it because there's shame, blame, and guilt tied to it. What if I offered myself, not somebody else? What if I offered myself? So I got this thing that I'm suppressing, that I'm not going to go down the road of blame, shame, or guilt, because that's never fixed anything. Never. Think about when you're in conflict with somebody else and you're like, I'm going to shame, blame, and guilt them. They are not going to change ever. However, if I say, hey, you know what? I want to explore this thing about me that I'm suppressing. I want to find out the roots of that thing. I want to honor where it may have come from because maybe it was around some kind of protection. And then I'm going to let that thing go.
Mm.
Right? That's a way to process. That's choosing integrity over fear. How can I be integrity about who I am? How can I have integrity about my humanity, my dignity over fear? Because again, the fear is just killing you, and the fear in that blame, shame, or guilt is literally poisoning your system. And there's elements of that in our bones. There is. Even me sitting here today, right? There's probably something I'm like, man, I ain't telling nobody about that thing, but I need to work on it because all it's doing is hindering my own growth. That's not healthy. And like, I'm no therapist, but I know that that's not healthy. Right. And so,
Which is interesting. Which is interesting. You wrote a book about, I want to say, how I would describe it is healing from past traumas that might be resident in our being, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But you ain't a therapist.
Nope.
So that's kind of an interesting,
yeah.
like, what's up, right? So where you coming from then, brother?
Yeah. So because of the work I do, I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like at first, you're doing the work and I may not have the language for it, but I'm gonna tell you, and I'm glad you brought the trauma back in. Sometimes what's in the space and I would try to bring it out. What's in the session is acute complex trauma, right? And so it's something that happened one time that nobody wants to talk about, but they still dealing with something that happened 15 years ago. I can't tell you how many times I've been facilitating something and a person says, this happened a long time ago, but I let it wash over my back. But I'm watching them tell it, and they're telling it like it was yesterday.
Mm.
Right? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It did just roll off your back. And so let's talk about that thing. And so, that complex is, I got multiple layers of trauma that's showing up that we're not talking about.
Okay.
Right. And so I may ask somebody, and I got to be careful with it. Again, I'm not a therapist, but I say, hey, if you don't mind, can I ask you, I heard you talking about what you just said, but where is that thing showing up in your physical body? Right. And then the person sit back and they're like, oh, well, as I'm talking, my shoulders are tight, my chest is tight, my breath is short. So then we start to figure out that this conversation that we've never had, that you're sharing in this space, is impacting your physical body. And so again, I'm not a therapist, but I've been in so many conversations that I've seen it. And I don't claim to be a healer. I just claim to be somebody that wants to hold space for these conversations. But what I will say, and I don't know if this is true for you, but at 56, I knew people that could do some healing in communities that were not doctors and didn't have the doctor, right? But we could go to them and they could offer some healing that may show up without the credentials. So,
Bart Bailey is the author of It's in Our Bones. How do people get a copy of the book?
yeah, so a couple ways. There's one independent bookstore in Allentown, Pennsylvania called The End. I think you can get it through them and they'll ship. You can go to my website, which is www.c, the number 2, another C, and then Jedi.com. C2CJedi.com. Click on the where it says books, and you can order it that way, and then we'll ship, and you'll get a signed copy if you order through our website. And then it's available on Amazon. You can get, the Kindle version through Amazon. You can get the paperback, and you will get it through them a lot faster than ordering through my website. I'll just tell you that right now.
Look, you ain't even fronting. You're like, look.
No, man. Listen, one of my boys was like, look, man, I've been waiting for that book for a week. He said, I'll still take the signed one, but I'm ordering for Amazon because I'm going to have it in 2 days. I said, all right, whatever.
Whatever you need to do, right?
Yeah.
It's so good. All right. Well, Bart, we will be on the lookout for that book signing
Yes.
in the Cuse when we have that date confirmed. And what is the date you're going to be in the Cuse, by the way?
Yeah. So everything will happen on March 11th. The session at the college starts at noon roughly, and then the session at Kraus is around 4:15 or so, and then the book signing will be after that. So probably like
So
6:30 or so.
March 11th. So
March 11th. Yep.
we'll look for that, and we'll look for you in community, and let the healing begin. Because you know what? It's in our bones. Bart Bailey, author here on Inspiration for the Nation, and a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
True.